The room was silent except for the low hum of alien machinery. Ethan Cole stood in the center, the only human in a hall full of tall, strange beings whose eyes glowed in the dim blue light. Above him, a wide crystal ceiling showed the endless stars, but his eyes stayed on the faces around him. He knew this was no normal meeting. This was a trial. A test, a decision that could change not just his life, but the fate of two alien sisters. The eldest of the alien council stepped forward, her skin shimmering like liquid silver. Her voice echoed through the chamber, deep and sharp. Human. Ethan Cole. Our people are dying. She paused, letting the words sink in. We need your kind to help us survive. Two guards entered from opposite doors, each leading a young woman. Ethan's breath caught. Both were unlike anything he had seen. One had deep golden skin, hair like threads of fire, and eyes that burned with a warrior's pride. The other had pale blue skin, hair soft and white as snow, and eyes that seemed to carry the calm of oceans. They were sisters, yet opposites. The guards brought them to stand beside Ethan, one on each side. The council leader continued. You must choose one, only one, to bond with and help repopulate our race. Ethan frowned, glancing between the two. The golden-skinned one, Leora, stood tall and defiant. The blue-skinned one, Siren, kept her gaze low but her hands clenched nervously. Something unspoken passed between them, something Ethan couldn't understand but could feel, a connection deeper than blood. He cleared his throat. Why only one? Why can't? The council leader's eyes narrowed. It is our law. Choosing both would break tradition, cause chaos in the bloodlines, and threaten our people's survival. Her tone made it clear. There was no debate. Around the room, alien council members whispered in low voices, their eyes sharp and calculating. Ethan noticed how some of them glanced at the sisters not with respect, but with something colder. Ownership made his stomach tighten. He turned back to the sisters, speaking softly so only they could hear. Do you want this? Leora's jaw tightened. If it saves my people, yes. But not at the cost of losing her. She nodded towards Siren. Siren's voice was quiet, almost trembling. We are bonded since birth. If one is taken away, the other's heart will break. Ethan's mind raced. If he chose one, the other would be left behind alone, possibly to suffer under the council's control. This wasn't just about reproduction. There was something else here, something hidden. The council leader's voice cut through his thoughts. Human, your hesitation is dangerous. Choose now. Ethan looked around, feeling the weight of dozens of glowing alien eyes on him. His hands clenched at his sides. Every instinct told him the easy choice was to follow their rules. Take one sister and walk away. But another voice deep inside whispered, no, something is wrong here. He took a slow breath, his gaze moving from Leora's fire-filled eyes to Siren's ocean-like calm. They were different, but together, they made something whole. He could feel it in the way they stood close. Their hands almost touching as if afraid to let go. The leader leaned forward, her voice sharp. Choose, human. Ethan's lips curved into a small, stubborn smile. What if I don't choose one? He said quietly, but loud enough for the whole room to hear. The hall fell into instant silence. The council members stared at him in shock. What if, Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger, I choose both instead? Gasps filled the chamber. The leader's eyes flashed with anger. That is forbidden. It would, Ethan interrupted. It would save both of them. Leora's eyes widened in surprise. Siren's lips parted slightly, hope flickering in her gaze. But around them, the council's whispers grew into a low, threatening rumble. Guards shifted uncomfortably, their hands moving closer to their weapons. The leader's voice dropped into a dangerous tone. Human, do not test our patience. Ethan didn't look away. Then don't test mine, he said firmly. For a long moment, no one moved. The tension was so thick Ethan could feel his heartbeat in his ears. Then, one of the guards stepped forward. Glaring, Ethan prepared himself. muscles tensing. He wasn't going to let anyone separate them. The leader finally spoke again, her tone icy. "You will have time to reconsider." But not much. The guards led the sisters away, though both turned their heads to keep their eyes on Ethan until the last second. He stood alone in the center of the chamber. Above him, the stars shone coldly through the crystal ceiling. He knew one thing for certain. They expected him to obey, but he had already made his choice. He would take both, no matter what it cost. Asterisk, the metallic doors slid shut behind Ethan, sealing the council chamber away. The air in the corridor felt heavy, almost pressing against his skin. Two guards walked ahead, leading the sisters down separate paths, but Ethan stepped forward quickly. Blocking their way, "I want to speak with them," he said firmly. The guards exchanged uneasy looks, but one finally nodded, leading him to a small side room. Inside, the walls shimmered with faint blue light, giving the place a cold, calm glow. Leora stood near the door, her arms crossed, the fire in her eyes still burning from earlier. Siren sat quietly in the corner, fingers brushing the small silver necklace she always wore. Ethan stepped inside, and the door closed with hiss. He faced them, lowering his voice. "Tell me the truth. Why does the council want me to choose one of you so badly?" For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Leora moved closer, her voice sharp. "Because they know separating us will break us." Siren's voice was softer, trembling. "It's not just because we are sisters. We were born connected." Ethan frowned. "Connected? How?" Siren touched her necklace again. "When we were children, an ancient healer bound our life forces together. One heart split into two bodies." Ethan stared at her, trying to understand. Leora stepped in, her tone fierce. "If one of us dies, the other will follow within hours." Ethan's stomach tightened. "And the council knows this?" "They know," Leora said bitterly. "They don't care. To them, we are breeding stock, nothing more." Ethan's mind raced. It was worse than he thought. Choosing one wouldn't just hurt the other emotionally, it could kill her. He looked at them both, their faces tense yet trusting. "You should have told me earlier," he said quietly. Siren's eyes dropped. "We didn't know if we could trust you." Her voice shook. But there was no accusation, just truth. Silence hung in the air, broken only by the faint hum of the walls. Ethan walked to the small window, looking out at the alien city beyond. Tall silver towers rose against a sky streaked with green clouds, and ships moved like glowing insects between them. Everywhere he looked, he saw control, rules, order. No room for choice. He turned back to the sisters. "We need to get out of here." Leora's brow furrowed. "You think it's that easy? They will hunt us to the edges of the galaxy." Siren's voice was almost a whisper. "They have ships. Faster than anything you've seen." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then I'll have to be smarter than anything they've seen." But before they could say more, the door hissed open. A tall alien male entered, dressed in black armor with the council's insignia. His eyes scanned Ethan coldly, then moved to the sisters, lingering too long. "The council has allowed you. One day," he said, "spend time with them, make your decision. Or they will decide for you." His gaze sharpened. "And you will not like their choice." After he left, the tension in the room thickened. One day, Ethan had 24 hours to figure out a plan that could outsmart an entire alien government. But before he could think strategy, he needed to know everything about these sisters. They moved to a quieter place, an empty garden chamber filled with glowing plants and the soft sound of water. Leora walked ahead, keeping watch while Siren lingered behind with Ethan. She glanced at him shyly. "You're different from the others." "No one has ever asked what we wanted." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's because they don't care about you. They care about what you can give them." Siren's eyes grew distant. "When we were little, we dreamed of leaving this planet, exploring the stars. But our bloodline made us prisoners before we even grew up." Leora returned, overhearing the last words. We don't need dreams anymore, Siren. We need action. They sat together beside a low glowing tree. Ethan finally asked, "What's the worst thing that happens if I refuse to choose?" Liara's answer came without hesitation. "They'll lock us both in the breeding halls. And you'll be sent back to Earth, memory wiped." Siren shivered. "And we'll never see each other again." Ethan leaned back, staring at the glowing leaves above them. He hated the idea of being anyone's tool, and he hated even more the thought of the sisters trapped forever. "I'm not going to let that happen," he said firmly. Both sisters looked at him, Liara with suspicion, Siren with a flicker of hope. But hope could be dangerous here, because Ethan knew the council was already watching them. Somewhere in a high tower, eyes were tracking his every move, and if they suspected what he was thinking, his chance would vanish before it began. That night, in the quiet of the guest chamber, Ethan lay awake. He replayed every moment, every word, every look between the sisters. There was more to this than survival. There was a secret the council feared. And somehow, Ethan was now part of it. As the alien city's lights flickered outside, he made himself a promise. Tomorrow, he would start planning their escape, not just for himself, not just for one sister, but for both, even if it meant war. Morning came slowly in the alien city. The twin suns rose above the crystal towers, painting the sky with gold and green light. Ethan sat on the edge of his chamber bed, staring at the floor. He had only one day left before the council forced their decision. And every second felt like a chain tightening around his neck. The door opened with a soft hiss, and Liara stepped inside. She was already dressed in her warrior style. Clothing, black leather-like straps over armor plates that shimmered faintly. Her eyes were sharp, but Ethan could see the tension in her jaw. "They've called you to the council again," she said. Siren entered behind her, her pale blue skin almost glowing in the sunlight. She didn't speak, but her hands clutched the silver necklace tighter than usual. Ethan stood, his voice steady. "Good. It's time I told them what I'm going to do." Liara's eyes narrowed. "Ethan, don't." He tilted his head. "Why not?" "Because if you say what I think you're going to say," Liara said, stepping closer, "they won't argue with you. They'll just remove you." Siren's voice was soft but firm. "Please, don't provoke them without a plan." But Ethan already had a plan forming. He couldn't leave this to chance. If he gave in now, it would be over. And if he stayed quiet, the council would win. So he needed to act, and he needed to act fast. The council chamber was even more crowded than before. Dozens of alien leaders stood in a wide circle, their glowing eyes fixed on him as he entered. The leader from yesterday, the silver-skinned matriarch, stepped forward. "Human," she said, her voice like sharp ice. "Your day has passed. Now choose." Ethan didn't move. Instead, he let his gaze sweep across the room. Every leader here thought they were untouchable, powerful beyond question. They didn't expect a human to challenge them. And that was their mistake. "I've made my decision," Ethan said, his tone calm but firm. A murmur passed through the crowd. The matriarch smiled faintly. "Then speak it, and it will be done." "I choose both," Ethan said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The chamber erupted. Some shouted in anger, others hissed in disbelief. Guards stepped forward instantly, hands on their weapons. The matriarch raised a hand, and the noise died down. Her eyes locked on Ethan. "You defy our law," she said slowly. "I defy your cruelty," Ethan replied without hesitation. Liara's eyes widened where she stood near the back. Siren's lips parted, shock and fear mixing in her gaze. Ethan continued, his voice growing stronger. "You say your people are dying. You claim you want to survive. But you're ready to kill one of your own just to keep a tradition." He took a step forward. "You don't want survival. You want control." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. The matriarch's face darkened. "You do not understand our ways, human." Ethan met her glare. "Then explain to me why two sisters, bound by life itself, must be separated." "No." One answered, Not one of the leaders moved or spoke. Finally, the matriarch said, "You are forbidden from taking both. If you refuse to choose, we will decide for you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then you'll have to catch me first." Gasps rippled through the council. Two guards stepped forward quickly, but Ethan moved first. He reached into his coat and pulled a small device, a human-made data chip. With one click, it projected a recording in the air, a hidden image of the sisters speaking in the side room yesterday, telling him about their life bond. Gasps turned into shouts. Some leaders looked at the matriarch in shock, others in disgust. Ethan had planted the device before meeting them. Insurance in case things went wrong. "This is what you've been hiding," Ethan said, turning so everyone could see. "You claim your laws are sacred, but you were ready to destroy both of them." The matriarch's eyes blazed. "Enough." The lights in the room flickered as a sudden lockdown alarm blared. Ethan knew he had just crossed a line he could never step back from. Guards rushed in from all sides. Leora moved instantly, knocking one guard's weapon aside and grabbing his arm. Siren darted to Ethan's side, pulling him toward the exit. They fought their way into the hallway, the sound of boots and alien shouts echoing behind them. Ethan's heart pounded. The council had just declared him an enemy. There was no going back now. They made it to a service corridor, breathless and tense. Leora slammed the door behind them and locked it with a heavy steel bar. "You're insane," she hissed. "Do you know what you've done?" Ethan smirked despite the danger. "Yeah. I've given us a chance." Siren's voice trembled. "But they'll send every ship they have after us. Then we just have to be faster," Ethan said, his mind already working through the next step. For a moment, no one spoke. The three of them just stood there, breathing hard, the weight of their choice settling over them. This wasn't just rebellion anymore. It was war, and Ethan had just chosen his side. Asterisk. The metal corridor shook as distant alarms blared through the alien city's towers. Ethan, Leora, and Siren kept moving through the narrow maintenance tunnels, their footsteps echoing against the steel walls. The air smelled faintly of burning circuits, a sign that the council had already activated the lockdown. "We can't keep running blind," Leora said, her voice low but urgent. Her hand rested on the hilt of the short plasma blade she had taken from one of the guards. "They'll seal these tunnels in minutes." Ethan glanced over his shoulder. "Then we need to get off this planet before they do." They reached a junction where several tunnels split. Siren knelt, placing her pale blue hand on the metal floor. Her eyes fluttered shut for a moment. She's sensing patrol movements. Leora explained quickly. Siren opened her eyes. "2 squads ahead, 1 behind us. The right tunnel is clear for now." They moved, taking the right tunnel until it sloped downward and opened into a vast chamber filled with old transport crates and decommissioned machinery. "This is one of the old cargo bays," Leora said, scanning the area. "No one uses it anymore, which makes it perfect for us." Ethan replied. He walked to a dusty control panel in the corner and began pulling wires. "What are you doing?" Siren asked softly, waking up something that's been sleeping for a long time. Ethan said with a faint grin. The console flickered to life, its alien script scrolling across the screen. Ethan's fingers danced over the controls, pulling up docking records and ship logs. After a moment, a schematic of an old freighter appeared in the hologram above the console. It was ugly, blocky, and patched with repairs, but Ethan's eyes lit up. "She's slow, but she's got long-range fuel tanks and enough hidden compartments to keep us off their scanners." Leora crossed her arms. "If it still works." Ethan smirked. "It will when I'm done with it." They found the freighter tucked into a shadowy corner of the bay. Dust coated its hull, and a spider-like maintenance droid scuttled away as they approached. Ethan ran his hand along the ship's side, feeling the worn metal. Old Earth cargo design. He muttered, "Looks like someone here bought it decades ago." Inside, the air was stale and cold. The lights flickered weakly, revealing rows of empty cargo racks and a small cockpit with cracked seating. "This will do," Ethan said, already pulling open a panel near the pilot's chair. Siren stepped beside him, her fingers glowing faintly as she touched the ship's systems. Circuits began to hum, the ship's old heart waking under her touch. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You can do that?" She smiled faintly. "My people have a connection to energy flow. I can encourage it." Leora checked the storage compartments and came back with a small crate. Inside were ration packs, old tools, and a hidden plasma pistol. "Looks like this ship had a smuggler before us," she said with a smirk. "Perfect," Ethan replied. "We'll need every advantage we can get." Hours passed as they worked. Ethan repaired the main thrusters. Siren recharged the ship's energy cells, and Leora cleaned the weapon system. Every now and then, distant sounds of heavy boots echoed from somewhere in the tunnels. "They're closing in," Leora warned. Ethan didn't look up. Then, "We leave now." But before they could take off, they needed a way past the planetary defense grid. Any unauthorized launch would be vaporized by orbital cannons within seconds. Ethan leaned against the pilot's chair, thinking hard. "Siren, can you mask our energy signature for a few minutes?" She hesitated. "I can, but it will drain me." "I'll make sure it's worth it," Ethan said. The plan came together quickly. They would time their launch with the departure of a legitimate cargo ship scheduled to leave in an hour, while the big freighter left. Their small ship would follow in its shadow, hidden from the defense grid by the larger vessel's signature. Once they cleared the atmosphere, they'd break away and jump to the outer rim, far from the Council's reach. At least for a while, as they prepared, Siren sat in the co-pilot's seat, closing her eyes to focus. Leora stood near the loading ramp, weapon ready in case anyone found them. Ethan checked the nav systems one last time. "All right," he said. "This is our only shot." The cargo bay doors began to open with a deep mechanical groan. Sunlight spilled inside, blinding for a moment. The legitimate freighter rolled forward on its mag rails toward the launch path. Ethan powered up their ship, the old engines rumbling to life. "Siren, now," he said. She exhaled slowly, her hands glowing as she touched the controls. A faint shimmer spread across the ship's hull, like invisible paint, masking its energy signature. Leora stepped inside and sealed the ramp. Ethan pushed the throttle, guiding their freighter into the larger ship's slipstream. The defense towers scanned, their beams sweeping over both ships. Ethan held his breath. The scanners moved on without alarm. They were through as the planet's curve fell away beneath them. Ethan allowed himself a small smile, but his relief lasted only seconds before the console beeped sharply. "Uh-oh," Leora muttered, reading the screen. A cluster of fast-moving blips appeared on the radar. "Council interceptors. Closing in fast. They found us," Siren whispered. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. "Then let's see if this old girl still knows how to dance." The engines roared, and the chase began. Asterisk. The freighter's old engines roared like a beast awakening after decades of sleep. Ethan gripped the controls tightly, his eyes locked. On the radar screen, 3 red blips were closing in from behind, the Council's interceptors. Sleek, needle-shaped ships built for speed and hunting down fugitives. "They're faster than us," Leora said, bracing herself against the co-pilot's seat as the freighter jolted forward. "Yeah," Ethan muttered, "but we're smarter than them." Siren glanced over her shoulder at the radar, her pale blue fingers tightening on the silver necklace. "They'll try to disable our engines first, then board us," she said quietly. "Not if we make it too hard to catch," Ethan replied, pushing the throttle to its limit. The stars outside stretched into thin white lines as the freighter dove between asteroid fields. Chunks of rock the size of buildings drifted past, spinning slowly in the dark. Ethan guided the ship into the shadow of a massive asteroid. The interceptors followed, their bright engines cutting through the black. "They're matching our moves," Leora said. Frustration in her voice. Ethan smirked faintly. "Good. That means they're predictable." He flipped a switch above his head, activating the freighter's old cargo release system. With a loud clunk, The ship dumped several large shipping containers from its underside. The containers spun wildly through space, smashing into one of the pursuing ships. A flash of orange light lit up the darkness as the interceptor exploded into fragments. "One down," Leora said with a grin. "Two to go," Ethan replied, his focus never wavering. The remaining two interceptors split up, one moving high, the other diving low to flank them. "They're trying to box us in," Siren warned. Ethan's mind raced. The freighter wasn't built for heavy combat. One direct hit from those ships could tear them apart. But there was still one trick left in the old ship's systems. He glanced at Leora. "Get to the weapons console. I'm going to line them up for you." She slid into the gunner's seat, her fingers flying over the alien controls. The targeting system flickered on, projecting a faint red reticle across the stars. "Got it," she said, eyes narrowing. Ethan swerved the freighter hard to the right, skimming past the edge of a rotating asteroid. The high interceptor fired, plasma bolts tearing past their hull. The freighter rattled violently, a few warning lights blinking red. Ethan gritted his teeth. "Hold steady, Leora, now." Leora squeezed the trigger, and a burst of bright plasma fire shot from the freighter's belly. The low interceptor took a direct hit to its wing, spinning out of control before slamming into an asteroid with a fiery explosion. "That's two down," she said with satisfaction. "One left," Ethan muttered. The last interceptor didn't hesitate. It closed in fast, weaving through the debris with inhuman precision. "They're better trained than the others," Siren said, her voice calm but tense. Ethan's eyes flicked to the fuel gauge. They didn't have the reserves for a long fight. "We need to lose them before they tag us with a tracker," he said. Siren suddenly reached over and touched the navigation panel. Her eyes glowed faintly as she whispered something in her own language. Moments later, a faint shimmer appeared. On the radar, a small gravitational rift ahead. Ethan recognized it instantly. A slingshot point. Nice work. The rift was a dangerous pocket of warped space, caused by the pull of two massive asteroids orbiting close together. If timed perfectly, they could use it to fling themselves far ahead at dangerous speed. If timed wrong, the ship would be crushed into fragments. "Hold on," Ethan said, gripping the controls tighter. The interceptor followed, closing the gap. The freighter's hull creaked under the increasing gravitational stress as they approached the rift. Siren's eyes remained closed, whispering guidance. "Closer. Closer, now," she cried. Ethan slammed the throttle forward, and the freighter shot into the gravitational pull. The ship lurched violently, every bolt in the hull screaming under the pressure. The view outside blurred into streaks of light and shadow. Then, with a deafening boom, they were flung forward like a stone from a slingshot. When the sensors cleared, the interceptor was gone, unable to match their maneuver without tearing apart. Ethan leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly. "We're clear," he said. Leora stood, stretching her arms. For now, Siren moved to the window, her gaze distant. "They'll send more." "They won't stop," Ethan nodded. "Which is why we don't stop either." He plotted a course toward the outer rim, a lawless stretch of space where the Council's influence was weak. It wasn't safe, but it was better than staying within their reach. Leora checked the weapons and reloaded the plasma charges. Siren prepared the med supplies, her hands still trembling slightly from the energy drain of masking the ship earlier. As the freighter cruised through the black, the three of them sat together for the first time since the chase began. There was no cheering, no celebration, just the quiet understanding that they were now fugitives from one of the most powerful governments in the galaxy. Ethan finally broke the silence. "We made it out alive." "That's step one," Leora smirked faintly. "What's step two?" Ethan's gaze hardened. "Making sure they can never take you away again." Asterisk. The freighter emerged from hyperspace into the black emptiness of the outer rim. Here, the stars felt sharper, colder, and the space between them heavier. The nearest habitable planet was a frozen world called Kareth 7, a place known for smugglers, outcasts, and people running from someone. Ethan knew it was dangerous, but danger was better than capture. The ship's old engines whined as they descended. Toward the icy surface, sheets of frozen clouds drifted across the pale blue horizon, and jagged mountains rose like the teeth of a predator. Leora stood at the cockpit's edge, her arms folded, scanning the terrain. "This place smells like trouble," she muttered. Siren, seated beside Ethan, placed her hand on his arm. "We'll be safe here." For a little while, but there was doubt in her voice. They landed the freighter in a hidden valley, using the jagged rock walls as cover. Ethan powered down everything except the emergency systems. The cold seeped into the metal, and their breaths turned to faint clouds in the air. "We'll rest for a few hours," Ethan said. "Then find someone who can wipe the Council's tracking records." The hours passed slowly. The silence of the valley was broken only by the distant groan of shifting ice. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Leora felt it too. Her hand stayed close to her plasma blade. Siren sat quietly, eyes half closed, as if listening to something far away. Then it came, a low hum, faint at first, then growing louder. Ethan's heart sank. He knew that sound. Council patrol ships. Leora was already moving. "They found us." Siren's eyes snapped open, fear flashing in them. "We have to leave now." Ethan rushed to the cockpit and powered up the engines. The freighter groaned, sluggish in the freezing air. On the radar, 3 ships appeared, descending fast from the clouds. "They're coming." "From the north," Ethan said. "We can't outrun them on open ground." Leora's eyes met his. "Then we make our stand here." They moved quickly, turning the freighter into a fortress. Leora positioned herself at the rear hatch with the plasma rifle. Ethan set up the old ship's turret to face the valley entrance. Siren began placing small energy crystals along the snow, her own kind of traps. "They'll discharge a shock when stepped on," she explained. "It won't kill, but it will slow them." Minutes later, the first ship appeared over the ridge, a sleek black craft with the Council's crest. It hovered for a moment before landing, its ramp lowering into the snow. Figures emerged, armored soldiers with glowing visors, weapons ready. They moved like predators. Slow and deliberate, Ethan fired the first shot from the turret, the blast striking the snow near their feet. The soldiers scattered, returning. "Fire!" Leora's rifle barked plasma bolts, each shot precise and fast. One soldier went down. Another fell into one of Siren's traps, convulsing as blue energy rippled over him. But there were more, always more. 2 more ships landed, pouring soldiers into the valley. "They're surrounding us," Leora shouted. Ethan cursed under his breath. "We have to hold until I can get the engines hot enough for a vertical burn." The battle raged. Snow exploded into steam where plasma blasts hit. The air was filled with the hiss and crack of energy. "Fire!" Siren stood near the hatch, her hands glowing faintly. She wasn't fighting in the traditional sense. Instead, she was pushing back soldiers with bursts of kinetic force, each wave sending them tumbling into the snow. Ethan kept firing the turret, his focus razor sharp. He knew that if they fell here, the Council wouldn't just take the sisters. They'd erase him completely. This fight wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about making sure the Council couldn't control their lives again. Then a deeper, heavier sound rolled through the valley, a sound Ethan recognized instantly. He turned and saw it, a massive gunship descending from the clouds. This wasn't a patrol ship, it was a Hunter-class war vessel. Its cannons could tear the freighter apart in seconds. "They're bringing the heavy guns," Leora said grimly. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then we finish this before they can fire." He turned to Siren. "Can you still mask our energy signature?" She shook her head. "Not for long. But maybe long enough." Ethan's mind raced. If they could make the freighter invisible for even a minute, they could lift off, use the storm clouds for cover, and escape the valley before the gunship locked on. "Do it," he said. Siren closed her eyes, her body trembling as she poured her energy into the ship. A faint shimmer spread across the hull. Leora fired a last round from the hatch, then jumped inside, sealing the door. Ethan ran to the controls and punched the throttle. The freighter roared, snow and ice blasting away beneath it as it lifted into the air. The gunship's cannons turned toward them, but its sensors found nothing. They slipped upward into the swirling storm clouds, vanishing from sight. In the cockpit, Ethan kept his eyes forward. Siren slumped into the co-pilot's seat, exhausted. But still breathing, Leora stood behind them, watching the radar until the blips faded away. "We did it," she said, a faint smile breaking through. Ethan nodded, "For now." But they won't stop. Ahead of them, the dark stretch of the outer rim waited. Somewhere out there was a place where they could hide, or a final battlefield where they'd make their last stand. Ethan didn't know which it would be, but he knew one thing: he would never let them take the sisters. Not while he was still alive. The freighter drifted silently through the darkness of the outer rim. Its old engines hummed softly, a tired heartbeat in the endless black. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Leora stood at his side, scanning the long-range sensors for any sign of pursuit. Siren was curled in the co-pilot's chair, still recovering from the energy drain she'd suffered. Masking the ship, for hours no one spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the quiet after surviving something they shouldn't have survived. Every breath they took was proof they were still free. Finally, Leora broke the silence. "We can't keep running forever," Ethan nodded slowly. "I know. But we need somewhere they won't follow." Siren's voice was soft but certain. "There is a place. A world my mother once told me about." Both Ethan and Leora turned to her. "It's hidden beyond a collapsed wormhole," Siren continued. "Almost impossible to reach unless you know the path." It took them 2 days to reach the wormhole's edge. The space around it shimmered like broken glass, fragments of light bending and twisting into impossible shapes. The old freighter groaned as Ethan steered closer. "This is risky," Leora muttered, gripping the side rail. Ethan gave her a small smile. "When have we done anything safe?" Siren placed her hands on the navigation controls, guiding the ship through a narrow thread of stable space. The wormhole's pull was strong, trying to drag them into the deadly fragments of warped matter. Ethan's knuckles went white on the light controls. Then in a sudden flash, they were through. Before them lay a world unlike any they had seen. Its skies glowed faintly pink, its oceans shimmered like silver, and forests of crystal stretched for miles. "It's beautiful," Leora said quietly. Ethan eased the freighter toward the surface, finding a wide plateau overlooking the valley. They landed and stepped out into the fresh alien air the wind carried. A faint floral scent, and the ground sparkled faintly under the sun's light. For the first time in days, they could breathe without fear. Leora walked ahead, scanning the horizon with a soldier's caution. Siren knelt near a cluster of glowing flowers, touching them gently. "This place was once a sanctuary for those who didn't belong anywhere else," she said. Ethan joined her, his eyes on the valley below. "Then it's perfect for us." They spent the next few days making the plateau their home. The freighter became their shelter, its cargo bays converted into living space. Leora set up perimeter defenses while Siren grew food in small garden patches using seeds she carried in her satchel. Ethan worked on the ship, improving it in case they ever needed to leave again. One evening, as the suns dipped low, casting long golden shadows, they sat together by a small fire outside the freighter. The air was cool, and the sky above was painted with stars. Leora leaned back against a rock, her armor set aside for the first time in weeks. Siren sat beside Ethan, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. "You could have chosen an easier path," Leora said, her eyes on the fire. Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe. But then I wouldn't be here." Siren's voice was soft. "You saved us. Both of us." Ethan shook his head. "No. We saved each other." There was a quiet moment where none of them spoke. The fire cracked softly, and the wind moved. gently through the crystal trees. For the first time since this began, Ethan felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel: peace. Weeks passed. They adapted to life on the hidden world. Leora trained each morning, keeping her warrior skills sharp. Siren explored the nearby valleys, learning the land's secrets. Ethan kept the freighter ready, just in case, but each day he hoped they'd never need to use it again. One night, a faint beeping woke him. He moved quietly to the cockpit, where the radar showed a single faint signal in orbit. It was small, too small for a Council warship. Leora joined him, her expression tense. Scouts? Ethan shook his head. Could be. Or it could be nothing. Siren entered moments later, her expression unreadable. If they found us, we'll fight. Ethan looked at both of them. They weren't the same sisters he had met in the Council chamber. They were stronger, freer, and united in a way no law could break. The signal eventually faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the ship. Ethan leaned back, feeling a weight lift off his chest. We're safe. For now, he said. Leora smirked. And if they come? Ethan's voice was steady. Then we show them why they should have left us alone. Months later, life on the hidden world became more than just survival. It became a life worth living. The three of them built more than a home. They built a family. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the silver oceans, Siren spoke quietly. They told you to choose one of us, but you chose both. Ethan smiled, his eyes on the horizon. And it was the best decision I've ever made. The wind carried their laughter into the endless sky. The Council might still be out there, somewhere in the dark. But here, on this hidden world, they had something stronger than fear. They had each other, and that was enough to face whatever came next.